All right, guys, now we have to talk about something fairly serious. I'm going to try and make it as entertaining and light as funny as I can. Hard to do because we're talking about the legalities. I'm actually Canadian. I'm going to talk to you about the Canadian anti-spam legislation, CASL for short. Some people think that stands for Canadian Anti-Spam Law. It's actually legislation. Potato, potato. Because that's a bit of a mouthful, I'm going to simply refer to it as Castle. It's affectionate nickname. Okay, Castle. C-A-S-L. Castle, yes, like the medieval fortress with turrets on top. Sounds just like that kind of castle. So, Castle is one of the toughest anti-spam legislations in the world. The penalty upon, well, not quite pain of death, but on pain of pocketbook to an individual. If you break this law, it is a maximum fine of up to $1 million. Yes, $1 million to an individual. Most of us, if you're watching this, you're probably a business. The penalty for a business is $10 million. So that's what's on the line for you. I don't know about you. I don't know if you want to afford that. I certainly don't want to pay that. $10 million is what's on the line, guys. So that's why you have to pay attention here. So what is it? How does it work? How does it apply? Full disclosure, full disclaimer, I am not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. This is not even a legal opinion. Go to your legal team. Okay, this just helps you understand the guidelines around the Canadian anti-spam legislation so you can go intelligently to your own lawyer or legal team, your legal counsel, to figure all this stuff out. Okay, so that's the disclosure, the disclaimer. Get your own legal advice. This is not it. So, Castle applies to, and there's layers to this onion that I'm going to try and peel back for you. Castle applies to a commercial electronic message, or a CEM. That's how it's defined in the legislation. That is sent to an electronic address. So, in a very simple sounding sentence, there's lots going on already. Listen to that sentence again. Castle applies to a commercial electronic message that is sent to an electronic address. Let's peel back the first layer of this onion, what's in a CEM or a commercial electronic message. To determine if you're sending out a CEM to someone, you have to ask yourself this question. Is one of the purposes of sending that message, is one of those purposes to encourage the recipient to participate in a commercial activity, like sales, like you're selling something? Ask yourself that question. Now, some parts of the message to examine to help answer that question is the content, hyperlinks in the message to a website content or a database, or the contact info. So look at all of that, and this is why it's a little fuzzy, guys. It's a little open to interpretation. These parts of the message that you examine are not determinative. They are open to interpretation. For example, the simple inclusion of a logo or a hyperlink or contact information in an email signature does not necessarily make an email a CEM. However, a tagline in a message promoting a product or service, or encouraging the recipient to purchase a product or service, that would constitute the message as a CEM under the definitions of Castle. Okay. Now, all of that was just part one of that very, very simple sentence. What's a CEM? Now, if you're sending a CEM, you have to send it to an electronic address. What does that mean? An electronic address isn't just email, guys. An electronic address is an email account, a telephone account. So yes, that includes SMS or text messages. It includes instant messaging accounts. See how complicated this is already getting? And any other similar accounts, I say in air quotes. Some social media accounts may constitute a similar account, but whether a similar account is an electronic address depends on the specific circumstances of the account in question. For instance, a typical ad placed on a website or blog wouldn't count as that. But whether the communication used on social media fits the definition of an electronic address, that is determined on a case-by-case basis. Again, that's why you need to consult your legal counsel. So depending on how the specific social media platform in question is used also helps determine whether it is an electronic address. For instance, Facebook posts would not be captured. That wouldn't be included. Simply just posting on your timeline, that's not an electronic message. But messages sent to other users using a social media messaging system like Facebook Messenger or LinkedIn messaging, that would qualify as sending messages to an electronic address. Opens up a whole world of implications, right? How do you know whether you are violating the laws of CASL, Canadian anti-spam legislation? There's 3 general requirements to be compliant within the law. Number 1, you have to obtain consent. Number 2, you have to provide identification information or your contact info. And number 3, you have to provide an unsubscribe mechanism when you send that message. 2 and 3 are actually generally taking care of you already if you're using one of the popular email autoresponders or CRM systems. For example, I'm an ActiveCampaign user. I'm an ActiveCampaign advocate, and ActiveCampaign and systems like it, they already force you to add in your contact info in any email templates you send before you send them. And they also, in the templates themselves, when they send those, they automatically provide the unsubscribe mechanism. Why? Simple. They don't want to get sued. Okay, they want to be compliant. If they're using their platform and they don't force us to use it as users as the of the platform, then they are also liable. So a lot of the systems have taken all of these very strict, very stringent anti-spam laws into account, and they're trying to protect their interests and ours. So 2 and 3 are easy. That's why I'm going to focus on number 1, obtaining consent. How do you do that? Under CASL, more layers of the onion that I'm going to peel open here, guys. There are 2 types of consent under CASL: express and implied. Express is when they check off a box or they enter something in a form field that says, yes, I am expressing my consent explicitly and you're good to go to send me this info. Implied could be a simple business relationship. If you obtain a customer, you are legally allowed to send them info because they are a customer of yours. That's the implied side of things. Now, to further complicate things, on the express consent side of things, express consent can be obtained in 2 ways: in writing or orally. If someone verbally tells you, yep, you're good to send me this, you are good to go, except the onus is on you to prove it if you're ever called out. So you have to get that in recording or however. Writing is probably the best way. And further complicating things, or further layers of the onion that we're peeling here, in writing, there are 2 forms of writing. That can include in both paper and electronic forms of writing, which is typically what we're talking about in terms of email and opt-in forms, the electronic form. We're not talking paper here. So if you're asking people to opt into a lead magnet, for example, and you have verbiage on the landing page where they grab that lead magnet where they're opting in for, if you have verbiage saying you're going to send them commercial messages when they opt in, you should be covered. But remember, I'm not a lawyer. Consult your legal counsel. To be super safe, you should have a separate checkbox that tells you that you have their express consent. When they opt in with the verbiage, they opt in with your checkbox giving their consent. Your CRM, your automated systems, your email autoresponders should store that record of consent in your database. Make sure it does that so you are covered. Because remember, the onus is on you to prove you have that record and they gave you that consent. That is in their database record. It should be time and date stamped when they gave you this consent, how they gave you that consent, all those things. For that reason, you should be regularly backing up your database records on a regular basis, because remember, the onus is on you. So that's the nuts and bolts of the Canadian anti-spam legislation, affectionately known as CASL. Protect yourself, go to your legal team, now you're informed, do not use this as legal advice. Remember, this is not legal opinion. It's just an interpretation and guidelines for you to go to your legal team. So protect yourself and keep that $10 million in your pocket instead of theirs.